Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well. So, the topic that I have chosen for this project is the conservation of mangroves, which is indeed an important biodiversity of the UAE. There are two members in our group, me, Aksagol, and my peer, Marcelin Premi Jorm. Our mentor is Dr. Jolly Jacob. Moving on to the introduction. So we had chosen this topic because we had collected an amazing eye-opening statistics which include that the overall mangrove loss is 4 times higher than the forest loss globally. That is between the years of 1980 and 2000, which is quite eye-opening a statistic. Moving on, even though the mangroves provide about around 120 million people with the livelihood, but they're still being cutting down because of a number of reasons, including urbanization, industrialization, for the use of timber, and a lot more. But which has another leading effect on climate change, which is the major effect of the cutting down of mangroves. Because these mangroves absorb the carbon in themselves, so when you cut down these mangroves, this carbon is released into the atmosphere. This whole phenomena is known as the blue carbon that the mangroves absorb in themselves. However, the UAE government has been doing many initiatives to protect these mangroves, one of which includes the Abu Dhabi Blue Carbon Demonstration Project, which is aimed at studying the carbon pools of mangroves around different regions of the UAE to take the respective actions according to the carbon pools of these mangroves. Moving on to my friend Marcelin.
Okay, so now we come to the methodology part. So for the methodology, we focused on three main areas, which is the theory of change, the CAP survey, and the log framework. So for the theory of change, we have to define three main parts, which includes the input, output, and the outcome. And for the CAP survey, which is also known as the Knowledge, Attitude, and Practice Survey, it was used as a means to test our test population on how much understanding they had about mangroves. And lastly, we have the log framework, also known as the logical framework, which is a detailed methodology used to understand how we can create a greater impact by developing certain goals and certain inputs. So we have firstly the theory of change, for where we had considered these 3 points as our input, output, and outcome. And after the input, outcome, and outcome had been defined, we had developed our theory of change as shown on the left-hand side. And through this particular theory of change, we hope to see that the students at Abu Dhabi University, by conducting online surveys and social media polls, will gain the opportunity to be part of several interactive events and seminars, which would help in forming new collaborations with other environmental organizations. This in turn would result students in having greater knowledge in understanding about mangroves protection, and also they would start practicing what they learned. And finally, through such an initiative, students can develop innovative solutions that could help in further growing more and more mangroves in the UAE. And this would further encourage them to implement sustainable habits in their day-to-day lives. Now, this is a brief summary of our logical framework. So through the logical framework, we first decided on a set of activities, and this included a wide range of topics such as development of the CAP surveys, research and development, organizing seminars, creating events, and recruiting more members in the future. And then we had defined our three outputs, which is mainly to show students about the work done by organizations such as the Eastern Mangroves, Jubail Island in Abu Dhabi, and other NGOs across the world. And output 2 and 3 would encourage students to gain maximum knowledge about mangroves, and would encourage them to take up initiatives in protecting our mangroves. And lastly, for our outcome, we want students to create a greater impact in understanding how UAE has been using mangroves in protecting coastlines and in capturing CO2. And also for outcome number 2, we want students to recognize government's efforts in protecting mangroves in the UAE. Now, the main important part of our research was the CAP survey, and this included 92 responses from both male and female students within various colleges or within ADU, and this included colleges such as College of Business, Arts and Science, Engineering, and Health Sciences. We had a combination of both male and female students, and this is a brief summary of the respondents' background information. So the survey had 12 questions, and the survey was broken down into 3 parts. The first 4 questions focused on the knowledge aspect, the second 4 focused on the attitude aspect, and the last 4 questions focused on the practice aspect. So this is like basically the brief summary of the knowledge part. And as we can see from these survey results, we see that most of the students who took this survey have developed a great understanding on the importance of mangroves in UAE's biodiversity, since they protect us from coastal erosion, provide food and shelter for aquatic life, they help in reducing CO2 emissions, and they're also helping in cancer research. And students have also agreed that it's mostly due to pollution, climate change, and coastal development and deforestation that mangroves are seeing a harmful effect. And this is also the main reason why majority of the students also believe that mangroves are an endangered species. Moving on to the attitude aspect, we can see that students have developed the right attitude, since most of the students agree that mangroves are playing a crucial role in maintaining our biodiversity and reducing climate change. They also have understood that they are responsible for reducing the pollution in mangrove sites, and we have to make sure that we are protecting them in the future. And also they have recognized that mangroves are providing us with several benefits. Now, moving on to the last part of the survey, which is the practice aspect, we can see that there is a small gap between the knowledge and the practice part. This is because majority of the students still believe that they do not have sufficient knowledge about mangroves, and 43.5% of them have said that they have very little knowledge. Although they have answered the knowledge aspect of the survey correctly, they are not confidently able to say that they have sufficient knowledge, which has prevented them from practicing conservative behavior. And students have obtained most of their knowledge from environmental conferences, school and university courses. And these last 2 questions focus on how students have behaved in the mangrove sites within UAE. And this has shown that most of the students, when they go for mangrove sites in the UAE, usually take and pack a picnic and have food on such sites, and this would cause more and more pollution in such sites, and this is again causing mangroves to degrade. So therefore we feel that students should not go and pack a picnic in such mangrove sites, but rather they should have food on the go. Lastly, we have also understood that most of the students have been using such mangrove sites just to get fresh air or take a boat ride and use it for other entertainment purposes. However, there has been government initiatives where information boards have been set up so that as visitors they can learn more about mangroves and the effect it causes, and this is not being properly utilized by the youth. So therefore we encourage the youth in the future that whenever they're visiting such mangrove sites, to utilize these sites in order to learn more about conservation. Now moving on to the conclusion by Aqsa.
So in conclusion, the project mainly was focused on the conservation of mangroves and how individuals, like on individual level, you need to take the protective actions to protect the local fauna and the flora and the fauna through sustainable development. But there were a number of limitations that we faced, which included that the sample size were smaller because we only surveyed the ADU students. We did not survey the staff and the faculty of ADU, and students from other university was not included in the survey. And the theory of change discussed by my friend, that it was not tested because we did not know whether it needs to be revised or it needs to be changed. And then data comparison in terms of the survey results was not done between different students because we only surveyed ADU students. And then we have a number of recommendations in terms of the project, that we needed more time to form initiatives, that is, in order to study the gap between the knowledge and the attitude part stated previously. And then we needed to find time to get more results in terms of online activities and so on. And that even mangrove form a major part of the biodiversity of the UAE. So it would be quite interesting to make it as a part of the course or a research project. Lastly, moving on to the acknowledgement part, we would like to thank our Dr. Jolly Jacob, for supporting us throughout the project and guiding us step by step. And we would also like to thank the Sustainable Campus Initiative Committee, falling under the Environmental Agency, Abu Abu Dhabi, for giving us this opportunity to conduct an important study among the youth. And I hope you liked our project, and thank you.